Today we're looking at Isaiah chapter 3, verse 1, and we're thinking about how to understand the Hebrew word key here. Now, I don't have the usual software up because I don't agree with the translation of Isaiah 2:22 in any of the translations. So we're using the translation we discussed in our last video. And by way of reminder, we were looking at this and seeing we have a command here, followed by a rhetorical question that gives sense to that command. And what sense does it give? Well, a rhetorical question is a way of making an assertion in the form of a question. So when you say, why should he be esteemed? It's not a legitimate question. What you're really saying is that he shouldn't be esteemed. So Israel is told to refrain from relying on mere human beings. And the reason they should stop looking up to human beings is because human beings shouldn't be esteemed. They have God's breath in their nose keeping them alive. They rely on God. So why would you rely on those who rely on God when you can just rely on God? So that takes us to chapter 3, verse 1. And we have this whole section starting with the Hebrew word key here. And we're thinking about how to translate it either as a conditional conjunction, if, or a complementizer. And you can see what a complementizer is if you click the link in the top right-hand corner. So let's read this text, and then we'll think about how we should understand key here. Behold, the Lord, Yahweh of armies, is about to remove from Jerusalem and from Judah support and supply, all support of bread and all supply of water, the mighty man and the man of war, the judge and the prophet, the diviner and the elder. And if we continued reading the text, we'd see a longer list of people that are going to be removed. One of the things that you would notice if you read the whole chapter is that the support, the word for support here is masculine in Hebrew, and the word for supply is the feminine form of the same word. And in the following prophecy, there's a long list of men who are going to be removed, up to verse 15, and then from verse 16 onward, it's a long list of women who are going to be removed. We read in verse 24 about how they're going to be wearing belts and a rope. Sorry, they'll be just wearing a rope, and instead of a robe, they'll be sackcloth. And this is talking about how they're going to be taken captive, which is very obvious when it says there will be branding instead of beauty. You brand slaves. You don't just brand random people in the street. So the men are going to be removed, and this is talking about the mighty leaders and the people who have power, and the women are going to be removed, and these are the rich women who were enjoying their wealth while their husbands impoverished people and took wealth from them, and the women didn't really care. They just were happy to buy gold and beautiful things and look fancy while the rest of the nation was suffering under the power of their husbands. So Yahweh is going to remove both. And this mention of bread and supply of water is symbolic of all that is being talked about, and support and supply are more metaphorical terms for the people he's going to remove. And we can tell that this is the case because we don't have verse 2 starting with, and the mighty man of war. It's in a positive, the list that starts in verse 2 and goes on is in a positive to what's being talked about here. So it's telling us what the support is that's going to be removed. So how should we understand this key? As a conditional, it really doesn't make much sense. If, behold, the Lord of armies is about to do this, and the list goes on, and then there's never a consequent. It's just if without a then. And that doesn't really make sense unless this is a conditional clause modifying what came before. So why should you stop relying on human beings or honoring them, well, he should stop if the Lord of hosts is going to do such things. And if he's not, then keep on honoring them, which is just silly. This hypothetical type of speech isn't how prophets speak, and it doesn't fit a reality conditional. And, well, I won't define what a reality conditional is here. You'll see that in another video. So the only thing that makes sense when we have an imperative and then a rhetorical question and then assertions. So we have three different clause types: imperative, question, and assertion. You can only have switching of clause types under the Spanish construction, which I'm labeling a privileged context construction, which is what we had going on in the previous verse. This sentence here gave context to the first sentence that made it easier for us to understand the command. And now this whole prophecy that follows helps us understand why man shouldn't be esteemed and why human beings shouldn't be, why Israel should refrain from relying or esteeming human beings. Well, why? Because God's about to remove them. He's going to have them killed with a sword and humiliated and branded and taken away as slaves. So I think that very clearly justifies why people should not be looking up to them and relying on them and esteeming them when they're about to be slaughtered or made into slaves. So how would I want to translate this verse? I perhaps would want to do it similar to this, where we have, I say this in light of the fact that, but maybe instead of this, I would say these things in light of the fact that, and then he becomes the complementizer that. And I have to use this huge sentence here, or this huge introductory portion here, because in English we don't have an equivalent. We don't have any way of directly translating key. If this were Spanish, we would be able to, but we don't. Well, this is English, so we can't use a construction that doesn't exist in English without it sounding bad. So we have to find some way to work around that. And the way to do that is to show that these things are to be understood in light of what follows. So I say these things in light of the fact that.